move. He will shoot, and he will score!
Welcome back to Our Schools, Our City. It's unbelievable that here we are in fall, deep into fall, and the trees are changing, and you can feel a little bit of that Christmas in the air,
Absolutely.
which tells us we're back to school, and it's lots of fun and in the so I wanted to share that yesterday I attended an event at Winter Hill, which was spectacular. It was around STEM education, and it was celebrating Unruly Studios' partnership with the Winter Hill,
Right.
where students were using splat devices to be able to code and to move. And so it fit our mission of the whole child perfectly, because it combined that academic, social, emotional, working with each other, and the physical activity of getting up and about. So it just reminded me of all the wonderful things that are going on in our schools.
And it really does demonstrate how education has evolved and how students' learning and the process that they use to learn has really changed over the years.
Absolutely, and it was announced that we are going to get splats for every single school.
That's
in Somerville.
fantastic.
So we're very happy about that. So
And hopefully the teachers and members can also play with them.
absolutely,
that's what
I was
I'm
ready
counting
to.
on.
I was ready to. So. But here we are today, and we have some special guests to talk about a very important initiative that's going to be going on. And so, Susana, would you like to introduce our guests?
I'd be happy to. We'll be talking about the Somerville Learning 2030, a visioning initiative that we've undertaken in the city, and it's a citywide initiative. And here to help us share a little bit more about this process, we have two special guests. We have Andre Green, who is the chair of our school committee. Thank you so much for joining us, Andre.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Andy Beck, the executive director of School and Main Institute, and there are consulting and partners in this important work. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Thanks for being. I'm happy to be here. Look forward to chatting.
Thank you.
And so, you each bring for this initiative, which holds such promise. I mean, it really is a community visioning process, and we're really looking for all the best thinking from all members of the community, whether you have children in school or not, to really think about and dream and kind of think about our own hopes for what the Somerville Public Schools, what the city of Somerville will offer going forward for students of all ages. And part of that is that we have in our partnership with our school committee a vision of the whole child, and a commitment that I've never seen to making sure that we actually get what kids need here in the city. So Andre, would you like to talk a little bit, because you have such a rich background of working with youth, and so just share a little bit about sort of your background and what excites you about this work with the 2030 initiative.
Sure. So, my background-wise, my first job out of college, I taught 5th grade at the old St. Benedict's here over in East Somerville. Since then, I have done tech consulting for schools. I've worked with youth builds. I've worked with dropout recovery and opportunity youth. I currently work on standardized testing and holistic assessment. So for me, the work is really about how it is that schools can be, as they were for me personally, drivers of equity and not sustainers of inequity. So for me, it's always through an equity framework.
It's interesting. I like to use this phrase, but I learn something new every day. I didn't realize that you had taught the 5th grade.
Yeah, it was. So I was actually just telling a story to someone recently. It was right. I was graduated college at 19, so I was 20 years old, teaching 5th grade. September 11th was my second full day as a teacher.
Wow.
And then again, I was at a Catholic school, and the scandal broke that spring. So I grew up a lot that year.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Wow.
And it remains the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
So I have all respect for our teachers, because it is literally the hardest thing I've ever done.
Well, we're certainly fortunate to have you as the school committee chair, and I've had the pleasure of working with you now for several years. So all of that wealth of knowledge and experience has certainly come to bear with helping with the policy components in the city. So, and then Andy, School in Maine Institute, we looked far and wide, and we did a competitive search for, the outfit that we thought could work with us and had a similar shared value and approach to do this really critical work for the Learning 2030. And you were it. And some of that was you had a history with the city. You've worked in Full Circle, for instance, and so you've done a lot of deep work. But also just the approach that School in Maine as an institution is a entity that works with schools and in cities has as an approach. And so maybe talk a little bit about your background and how School in Maine came about.
Sure. My individual background, not that dissimilar from Andre. I was a teacher, I was a building principal. I always found myself drifting sort of towards kids that were falling through the cracks or were not being served well by the situations they were in. Ended up working for School and Main Institute now for 25 years plus. And we as an organization work around the country sort of focusing again on what communities can do together that they couldn't do alone. And there's a lot of people working individually or in silos, or the schools are separate from the community, or the educators are separate from the employment community. And so we have all these different initiatives and different things going on in communities that people feel like, well, maybe if we have the answer or we can do it our way, and people are ended up being separated from each other. And so our mission as an organization has always been to form sort of uncommon coalitions, if you will, of organizations and people trying to do more together than they can alone. And I think the challenge is that's not really the way we're used to working.
Right.
You know, we say it takes a village, but we act like we could do it alone.
Yeah. So what was it about this particular initiative that attracted you?
Well, I mean, we were very excited about the opportunity here. It's, as Mary said, to find a school committee, a superintendent, the community itself, the organizations, the mayor's office, all of these organizations who really want to hear from people in this community about what's the most sort of highest priorities that people have relative to youth learning and youth development, and that you're really interested in their voice. Oftentimes, plans are made about people without people. And so this is, you know, exciting, unique opportunity to, you know, to hear from people, and people who are not educators, people who maybe do not have children, but people who care about the city and people who care about what happens in the future. Very exciting.
I think about in the early days from the By All Means initiative, you know, came this idea about the Somerville Learning 2030.
Yep.
We really debated for a long time about the right name, you know, because names
did we?
mean something.
That's
and,
right.
You know, what they communicate. And so often people hear the 2030 and they think, oh, that's so far away that it's not as relevant to me. But yet it is, because this is really about the city as much as it is about the school district. And it's really about how does the city be that learning playground for our students. And so I'm just, you know, for each of you in your respective roles, you know, how would you describe this to the audience so that they could really understand what is Somerville Learning 2030?
So from my perspective, you know, it's about setting a big vision, right? I don't intend to be on the school committee forever, and even if I did, the voters vote for might disagree, but
Plans change, Andre.
yeah.
You never know.
But I do think it's important that we tackle really what does it mean to educate someone for the 21st century in a real sense. Like, you say 2030 seems very far away. I think when you say the number, it sounds far away because I think we struggle for that as 2018. But the iPhone, we are farther away from the invention of the iPhone than we are from 2030.
That really puts it in perspective.
My kid will still be in school in 2030. But we also know that the world of 2030 will be vastly different. The example I give all the time is there are 20 million jobs in America that are primarily about driving. All of those jobs are going to be gone in the next 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
All of them.
That's interesting.
So, like, we know that we can't do what we've been doing.
Right.
Even if what we've been doing has been perfect, and we have deep inequities in our system, so what we've been doing hasn't been perfect. But even if it was, we know that we can't do that going forward. But we also know that to do those big, daunting, scary things, it takes a whole community buy-in. And so the whole community has to be part of what we do, as you mentioned, like, and you know, Somerville is guilty of this too, of making decisions for people, not with people. So this is really an opportunity to really take a step back and make sure that as we go forward, making decisions with people, not for them.
Right.
That's a great point.
So before we move too far down the road, really
Right.
understanding what the community values, what's
Right.
important to every member of our community.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, a unique aspect of what you're undertaking here is, is that the notion that if you're not an educator, if you're not professionally working in the field, you still have value to offer to this conversation is critical. You know, people may work 2 or 3 jobs, people are very busy, you know, there are lots of things going on, but the priorities, the voices that people have, the out-of-the-box thinking that could come from people who live and work in the city is, you know, is what we would like to see from this process. You know, I would love to hear whether you're a working mom, whether you're, you know, a stay-at-home dad, or whether you're homeschooling, or whether you have kids in charter school or public school. What do you think is important? What are your priorities for the next, not just the next 12 years, which is a lot closer than we think, but also right now? Because right now impacts what's going to happen 12 years from now.
Absolutely.
As well.
So, you know, that's it's such a broad undertaking. And so maybe to just describe from school in Maine, how have you gone about, and what types of activities have you structured, given how diverse we are in, you know, 4 miles of density in Somerville of people? You know, how have you gone about sort of laying and constructing the plan in a way to ensure we're getting as many voices as possible?
Yeah, so it's not easy, as you suggest. We've been working closely with a group of folks who representing both schools and community, the mayor's office, the community-based organizations, trying to plan together about how we might undertake this process. We've been doing focus groups with people who live and work in the community. We've been meeting with young people, again, who have a voice in what their future could look like, what learning opportunities excite them or are relevant to them. And so we've been meeting, doing focus groups. We've created a citywide survey that we would love for people to fill out. We have been at Tufts Day celebration. We've been at ResiStat meetings. We're going around the city. In November, we're having a series of community visioning sessions that we could talk about specifically with dates and places. Again, to try and get as much input, as much voice as we can. We're depending upon people such as yourselves to help make that happen as well.
And you really have spent a lot of time also developing, identifying what we call community connectors, because this is work that has to be owned by the community and driven by the community. And all of us have some connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though I live in West Medford, which is less than 100 feet over the Somerville line, I don't live in Somerville, and so it's really important for people who live and work here to own this. It's not about us, it's not about the process, it's really about the people here, their vision, their ideas, how we can sort of take that input and give back to them what they gave us in a way that they can say, yes, that is important to us. And then the city, the educational institutions, the organizations can make plans on how to get there.
Mary mentioned something really interesting and really important, and that's that the name. We spent a lot of time on coming up with an appropriate name, something that we felt would be, that the community could really grab onto, because words mean something to people. And the word learning oftentimes conveys education. But learning is something that really happens in all aspects of our lives throughout the entire day. Can you talk a little bit about some of the outside of school learning experiences that students, young people might be involved in?
Sure. So we know that as much as it may not feel like that way to students, we only have them in school for roughly, all said and told, roughly 2 years of their life, actually, when it's all math's all done. So what happens the other 16 years, the first 16 years, is vitally important. Absolutely. And it's, you know, in Somerville, it's all our sports leagues, so it's making sure that those are out-of-school activities, camps for some of our population in the summer. It's also, you know, the unstructured time, right? Like, and one of the reasons I love Somerville, and one of the reasons why I raised a kid in Somerville is you're never more than 10 minutes away from a park, or a playground, and so like that time is where Maddie's learned, my daughter's learned met her friends and learned a lot of social stuff. So it's that overarching vision, as you know, Somerville School we say, the whole child, right? So it's, and that's why one of the things I'm really excited about Somerville Learning 2030 is not just the schools, right? It's not Somerville Schools 2030. That was actually something that we worked very hard on when we were doing naming things, is to be like, it's bigger than just SPS.
Right, absolutely.
You know, it's interesting, when we did the high school project, you know, one of the things I was most proud of was how inclusive the project was. You know, we didn't just garner opinions from students and parents and the students to be and the staff, but we actually went more broadly to the community. And what we found was that the community really sees our schools as resources. And in the case of the high school, they're very hungry for that to be a resource. You know, our vocational and our technical programming and the ability for young people to offer real services to our community. And so what has emerged in that project is just a wonderful representation of the community and education and our schools coming together. And I think, you know, my hope in this project is that we see that at an even larger scale, where the city is really that campus. And we're able to leverage both, you know, the resources that are out there for our students, but more importantly for all kids. And that can be kids that are attending charter or parochial or are homeschooled, but they're really all youth in the city. And so that's been exciting and very different in a way to be able to think about things.
Right, absolutely. And Andy, you mentioned that it's important to hear from the voices of people that may not even have children. Why is that important? What is the relevance to them?
Well, this is their city,
Yep.
just like everybody else, and young people are the foundation of the future of every city or every community. And so, you know, I think their voices around not only their own experience in learning and what ignited their passion, as we, I think, all know, when somebody's passionate about what their learning opportunities are, it's a whole different experience than if they feel like, well, this is just what I have to go through. And so there are a lot of good minds in this community.
Absolutely.
Young minds, old minds, experienced minds, grandparent minds, who have been through a lot and know a lot. And so we would never want to limit this to just young people who are in school or people who have children, because, again, the future of the city, being able to have the city be affordable, being able to have the city be viable as jobs change. You know, we know the evolution of technology. We're competing in certain ways for learning opportunities with young people who in 3 seconds can go around the world with a device in their hand.
That's true.
So, you know, we really need all the best thinking we can find about what it will excite people, interest people, and what's also viable.
So concretely, when you think about the types of questions you're asking, both in the focus groups and in the survey, what's a couple of examples just for the audience to get a sense of? What are a couple of examples of things that you're asking folks to respond to? And then I'm just curious, but you've done this work now for a long time. Has there anything that's surprised you about your experience thus far with Somerville?
Well, again, I think what's great in Somerville is the alignment. You know, the alignment between the institutions that exist in this city. There's not a battle between institutions. There's not the school committee and the superintendent and the mayor in different places. Everybody is aligned around wanting input, wanting voice, wanting feedback around these ideas. And that's not always the case in a lot of places we've worked. You know, oftentimes there's political agendas, there's hidden agendas, you know, there's different priorities that people have or reasons for being in a certain place. And so what's nice about being here is that it feels like there's this push in the same direction. Everybody's interested in the best way to move forward, the best way to get voice from whomever we can get it from. So that's exciting. You know, and the kinds of things we're asking people really are common sense kinds of questions. What's working for you or for your children, or what worked for you when you were in school or in your community as a young person, the learning kinds of activities that you experienced. What's not working in Somerville specifically? What's challenging? Is it transportation? Is it childcare? Is it, affordability, after school activities? So we're basically asking a lot of common sense kinds of questions, and then asking people, what do you think is important that young people in the next 12 years sort of learn to be able to do and use, and what's the best way in your mind to be able to access it?
And Andres, under your chairpersonship, we instituted public comment, and so I know that voice has been extremely important to you as a professional and you as a person in terms of school committee. And so I'm curious, but in this process, what do you think are some of the ways that we can reach out to ensure that we're getting diversity of responses?
Sure. I think, obviously, I think that's super important. Like, I don't want to spend all the time and all this energy just to hear from people we always hear from, right? And I think, and School of Maine is doing this, and I think we can all do more and better. It's going where they are, right? Like, yeah, right. We did institute public comment, but I think that's more. I always think that is more as a release valve than a way of actually getting the routine day-to-day comment. Because by the time someone's mad enough to, because usually people go to public comment because they're mad.
Right.
By the time they're mad enough to come to public comment, we've already missed the opportunity to talk to them. But it's going to their churches. It's going to the events. There's apparently an event at the Mystics this Saturday, and I hope we can get some surveys there. But it's really, outreach involves going out, right?
Yep.
And it requires, I think, people going into spaces they may not necessarily think of being comfortable in, because if it's a space you're comfortable in, it's not it's still your space.
Right.
But I think, I'm glad to hear that, we're going to register stats and that we're going to these things. I think the real trick is this. It's got to be a constant thing, right? I know because I've been on the receiving end. It can't be we come in like, oh, we care about your opinion. We do the surveys and then they never hear from us again. It's that constant relationship building. You see it in the PTAs that have done this work really well. They know they've done it because it is that constant, never letting go, almost relentless outreach.
You become part of the community,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
That's right. And Susana, you co-chair our steering committee, and so our steering committee has such an important role
Absolutely.
in ensuring that we are reaching. So maybe we could tell the audience a little bit about some of the types of roles that are on that steering committee.
Oh, absolutely. We have representatives from the city, as Andy mentioned, from a number of different departments within the school district, from the community in general. And their role I think, is twofold. It's not just steering the work and bringing ideas, but also serving as the connectors to the broader community. As I mentioned earlier, we each are connected to other people in one way or another, not just professionally, but on a personal level. And this is very much a personal project.
Right.
It's a project about the future of our, not just of our youth, but the future of our communities. And so I think that their role is absolutely critical.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so Andy, coming up, what are some times and some places that, somebody that has not even heard about this yet can help to give their input and be involved?
Yeah. And if I could just comment on what Susana just said. I mean, one of the interesting things about this so far has been that people have been thanking us for listening. People have a lot to say and often feel, as Andre said, it comes out either to their own family or their own situation, but it's not heard in larger circles. And so the fact that we all are interested in hearing people and really listening. At the end of these meetings, I'm always struck by people saying, thank you for listening to me. And so I think the opportunity to go to places and to hear people who maybe are not ordinarily heard is a real great opportunity for us to be involved in. November 3rd, as Andre mentioned, a week from Saturday, we will be doing a community visioning session, all of us, at the Mystic Community Room from 10 to 12, and there'll be food and childcare, and we hope people will come out and join us. We have a fun, interesting process to get people's ideas. This will not be a meeting, where somebody's going to lecture to you or share their sort of wisdom. It's really, again, interactive and hearing from the community. Then November 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. we'll be at the Senior Center on Broadway doing the same for a whole different group of people, we hope, and everybody's invited from all sides of the city, from all the nooks and crannies of the neighborhoods. And then finally on November the 13th from 5:30 to 7:30, we will be at the Cummings School doing another community listening, visioning session. All of those will have childcare provided, they'll all have food, and we really invite and encourage people to come out. If they have questions, they can go to the website, which is at bit.ly/Somerville Learning 2030. I'm sure if you Google Somerville Learning 2030, you'll find it. You can call Susana at the school department.
Did we put a link on
And
it?
there's a link to it on our home
it.
webpage as well, so, yeah.
So, sometimes I think people might be a little nervous about having never participated, say, in, a visioning session. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's really an informal process. We're going to ask people some sort of questions that relate to what's working, what's missing. In our sessions that we're going to do, we'll take a look back at Somerville over the last 30 years and people's experience with learning and with opportunity and with youth development. And then we'll try and sort of do some quick little analysis of what people feel like, we've been doing this and it hasn't been working, so we should do more of something else. What is that? That's what we'll discuss together.
Right.
It's great.
And it really is very much, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
It's just a little
Very
bit more
much.
formalized conversation with,
Yeah.
with some specific questions.
Yeah, and we'll take notes.
All right, and someone taking notes.
And we'll put it on flip charts on the walls, but it's interactive. It's people, neighbors talking to neighbors, grandparents talking to young people. There'll be youth involved in some of these. So it's really, again, a listening conversation.
Right.
That's right. And if people don't have time, which some people may not, to participate in a full-fledged learning session, they can always do the survey.
Please, the
Please.
surveys are online.
They can find the links
They can
on our
they're
website.
they're in English, they're in Spanish, they're in Portuguese, Creole we're working on. Please, we need your input. We'd love to hear. If you can't make it, it takes 5 to 6 minutes to fill one out.
That's right. And Chair Green, at day's end, what does a successful process look like for Somerville Learning 2030?
I think Days in a successful process is one where we honestly can say that we've heard from a broad cross-section of the city, and that we, I hope, come out with some really clear values and priorities that I and other elected leaders can then use to turn into, well, what are the policy priorities? Where are we going to spend the money? How are we going to be different, right? Like, that, for me, that's the key thing, is that because of Somerville Learning 2030, city government should do some things differently going forward.
And Andy, from your perspective, running it?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as Andre said. I mean, we're excited about the different voices, and at the end of the day, I hope that's reflected in the data we get back from wherever people live or work in Somerville. Not just the same voices, not just people who go to school committee or people who go to Resi-Stat meetings, but people who have an interest in the city, who want to live here for the next 20 years or 10 years and are invested in seeing something exciting happen. And again, it's rare to see a place where people are so, in city government and in schools, are so interested in what other people think and value. And so my hope is that we come out with some strong themes and values and priorities that set a course, if you will, an action plan for how you would invest your time and energy, and reflects the needs that young people have.
Well, we can't thank you enough, Andre, for your leadership, and Andy for being involved in this and continuing to care about Somerville and to work with us on this critical work. And believe it or not, our time is up. Susanna, I know there's a couple of quick announcements.
Goes by very fast. It's just a reminder, please stay connected. Visit our website to learn what's happening in our city and in our schools. And believe it or not, we're heading into the second round of parent-teacher conferences. So again, you can find that information on our school website calendar.
And at those parent conferences, we may also have some Somerville
Absolutely.
Fill out a
Education
survey.
I hope it's more than that. I hope it's-
Again, thanks to our crew for allowing us to be here today and to come to you into your homes. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Our Schools, Our City.
Ed was looking to create. Nice move. He will shoot.